On this episode of JRL Golf Academy, I had Dan Carraher, PGA, European PGA coach, LPGA coach, works with all the tour players, has a phenomenal junior program there out of Jacksonville, or just a little south of it. Listen into this interview. We talk about drills to draw the ball, to fade the ball, and also a lot about junior golf and things that you might not know to have a successful junior program. Thanks for tuning again to JRL Golf Academy.
Well, maybe we could knock out some questions, guys. If you guys have questions for Dan, Dan, you've always been known, at least in my eye, obviously a well-studied instructor. What were some of your influences, let's just say, in your instruction, kind of early on, and then like what you're into right now? I know that I see you use quite a bit of technology, right? But also you have a great eye.
Yeah, we have a lot of toys. I would say I don't necessarily use them all the time. I feel like the more you use them, the less you have to use them, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
The toys are most beneficial for the person that needs to be sold on making the change.
yeah,
Thankfully, I would say at this point, usually what I have to say carries enough weight to where there's not a lot of pushback. So
yeah.
they generally just do what I ask them to without having to be proven it at this point.
Just do this,
Um,
guys.
I do find a lot of the technology is really good with some of the tour players and really good players to kind of, especially when they're swinging poorly, but especially when they're swinging well, to kind of have a baseline of this is what you do on your best days. And since feel kind of changes every day,
Yeah,
um, it might feel totally foreign to them, but you can have proof and kind of convince them that this is literally the same thing that you were doing a month ago when you were playing really well,
yeah,
even if it feels completely foreign and weird right now. Like, we're not actually changing anything. We're trying to just get it back to where it was.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think that's the time where it's probably the most useful.
I remember Scott Hamilton, we were talking one day, and he thought there's a business on tour if you can get all that equipment in a trailer. And when somebody's really playing good, you know what I mean, get them all measured out and, at the tour event and stuff like that. He thought there was an actual business there if somebody wanted to take that on.
I think it would be tough to orchestrate that.
Yeah,
It'd be a large expense to kind of
yeah,
make all that happen. Like, I think it's possible, but I think you're more likely to see it in the physio truck. Like, I
yeah,
think you're more likely to see it on the tour's end of having some kind of portable setup.
yeah.
But some of it's so not portable that, like, you're not going to see gears on a range without it being
Yes.
set up days in advance.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a quick fix there to put that deal up. So, how long you been teaching now, dude? Because I remember I met you actually out here with Dana years ago on the back of Skylink driving range. We went down there and
Yeah,
hung out with Dana back in the day.
I think that had to be like 2009-ish, I
Yeah,
want to
right
say.
before you left
Yeah,
the West
2009,
Coast.
2010-ish.
Yeah.
I would say teaching full-time since about '07, and
Okay.
teaching, I would say, as part of what I do, probably since '05.
Okay. Okay. And what kind of college golf, junior golf? What were those days like for you?
I was a late bloomer junior golf-wise, so I actually happened to be a bunch of the juniors. I have some really good juniors, but I would say I also have a bunch that get really good late in the recruiting process.
Uh-huh.
And so I can definitely relate hard to that. I would say I was very mediocre until I was about 16, and
Okay.
then got like probably 7 shots better in like a year and a half.
Really?
And by the time uh, I was pretty good, it was kind of a lot of coaches already had their squad kind of locked up. Um, so I went to Central Florida. That kind of didn't necessarily work out as well as I had planned. And then ended up kind of turning pro really young, wasn't ready, failed at that, and ended up doing this, which is probably the best thing that could have happened,
See, that's what I
really.
like. It was the hard knocks of golf life, right? And I mean, that's how you probably got a lot of your knowledge and, your expertise, and you can relate to players that are trying to make it, right?
Yeah, I was the it's funny. I was pretty athletic, and a lot of sports came really easy, and golf was the opposite. Golf had to work at, and
Yeah.
growing up, we didn't really have a ton of money, so I couldn't really afford golf lessons. So like I was literally at like 9, 10 years old going to the library and checking out like 8 books on the golf swing, and like I had an old like high 8 video camera and would like literally hit balls in the backyard and film stuff and just experiment on everything, which probably initially made it worse. Like,
Right.
But then once it kind of came together, I think that's why the massive jump kind of happened all at once, is that when I started to kind of figure out what was garbage and what would actually work and kind of narrow the focus down a little bit, it got pretty good pretty quickly.
You know, I mean, I see you got a cool little thing. I'm going to jump back to something else, but I wonder if that's just the way your brain works mechanically, because I see all those knives that you make, and something tells me that you're just sort of like, and I know you're into cars,
Yeah.
like you just kind of got like a mechanical side to your brain. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I was a mechanical and aerospace engineer major at Central Florida before I left. So, yeah.
That's cheating, dude.
But yeah, so I would say taking things apart and figuring out how they work is probably high up there on things I like to do.
Which is pretty good for a golf instructor as yourself. I mean, I see the changes that you make with your players online, dude. It's up there with the tops, for sure. Pretty impressive. So, the other thing that I was going to say was, or ask you about was, what were your early influences? I mean, I know, if I recall, that you knew some stuff about the golfing machine when I saw you. Did you go study that a little bit? And what else have you studied?
Yeah, that was one of the books I checked out. So I actually did a book report at 12 years old on the golfing machine.
Stop it, dude.
Yeah.
How'd you do that, dude? I couldn't even read the thing at 22.
I don't know. And then I think I got my GSEB. I think I was probably like 23 or 24 when I got that.
Yeah.
But kind of already knew what I needed, like went there for the sheet of paper, not necessarily to actually have to go through any of that.
Here, folks, here's my paper.
Yeah. And really it was everything. Like I read literally anything I could get my hands on and usually tried it on myself. And a lot of things from a lot of people worked. Found out that very few people had all the pieces of the puzzle like together. Like they had parts that were really good and then parts that didn't seem to kind of fit very well. Or the guys that taught a method that were really good kind of figured out that if you had every single piece that they wanted, it could work pretty good. But if you deferred anywhere at any point, it was never going to work. So I kind of started getting into it. I would say after about 16, 17, it was a lot of figuring out why some teachers are really good, trying to figure out why some teachers only worked for certain players, and then had bad effects on other, like had probably as many failures as they had success stories.
So that's cool.
And just try to figure out, kind of like taking apart a car and doing all the other stuff, like trying to figure out why things work some of the time, not others, and what was kind of the differences between parts that worked together and parts that didn't.
I think that makes a dangerously good teacher right there. Like you start looking for patterns, right? That's really what you were doing. Did you find, or have you found that, like, say with one model or system, whatever we want to call it, do you find you're finding like interchangeable pieces?
Yeah, I think a lot of the good stuff, I would say the most successful teachers, there is plenty of room for, I would say, self-expression in there. Like there's some variations that kind of can work. Not necessarily that they're encouraged, but that you will see variations in anything that's good. And I think there's some patterns that are really strict about what you can and can't do. And I think they can still be extremely successful. I just think you're kind of pigeonholing yourself and making it to where you kind of either have one shape or one trajectory you can play, and you better be darn good at that, and you better like it. Like that better be the ball flight you see when you go out and play, and kind of what you want to hit, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right. So it's kind of knowing what that brand is going to bring, right? It's like, hey, dude, if you're going to do this, you're going to draw the ball, and that's all you're going to do. Or you're going to fade the ball if you do this. That's about it.
Yeah.
I
and
gotcha.
actually, I don't mind one-dimensionality. I think it's very good for playing high-level golf. You just like the first question I generally ask anyone that's any good is, what do you want to see? Like, when you stand up here, what are you hoping to hit?
Yeah.
And usually look at what they do and then kind of talk about either things they need to change to make that happen more often.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the easiest answer is changing what they want to see.
Yeah.
Like that they're more inclined to actually draw the ball even though they want to fade it, and trying to convince them that drawing it's not the end of the world. And that it'd probably be a shorter path to being really good if they just went with what they were actually already good at.
I like what you said there about that, trying to convince players, because I think that's what we have to do a lot of times, right, with players, is convince them why you want to do this. If you do this, you will get more distance, or your shot shape will be less severe if you do this, right? You're just trying to convince them to do it.
Yeah, and even some people like Julian, who's here, convincing him to play more of a pull cut instead of the leech, like aim a mile left and hitting these big push cut flares that had a much higher risk of double crossing and hitting the overdraw when you're aiming way left, trying to hit a big push cut.
Death.
And that one didn't take that long to convince, but it's more from a conceptual standpoint, but like getting them on the golf course and going, this is where you have to aim. Like, this is how you have to set up. That's the hard part, is changing someone's sight lines and kind of how they see the golf course when you're changing someone's ball flight.
I gotcha. Can we go into Julian? Can we talk a little bit about him and like how long? I mean, I've seen his meteoric rise, and I know that he started with you, and it really took off. Quite honestly, I mean, from what I've seen from everything, through social media and all that stuff. And how long you been working with him, and what kind of things did you work on? Because you said, was he a drawer originally?
I would say his golf swing was very draw biased.
Okay.
But he wanted to hit cuts.
Okay.
So it was the situation where what he was doing and what he wanted to do was totally at odds with one another.
Okay.
And he is insanely talented and had some of the best hands I've ever seen. So would get away with it to a certain extent. And I would say his good has always been insanely good. It was just very streaky.
Real streaky. Okay.
And driver was tough. Like, it went far, but hitting it on European or PGA Tour level golf courses, it was tough to keep it on the short grass.
I gotcha. So what do you start out with? I mean, you get this Tour Pro. Obviously, he's not as high as he was now or is now in a ranking, but what was your process? What was your system of this guy coming to you and he goes, all right, dude, I need to hit a pull cut? Where do you start with that with him?
So first it was like a bunch of time talking. And the first lesson was all just like literally hitting wedges like 100 yards. Just kind of talking about what he wants to see, how I would go about doing it, kind of, again, getting him to trust. Like, it was more of an interview than it was like a full-on lesson. And once he kind of it was kind of like, okay, well, let's start with this. Let's try this and then see how you like it. And then we can go from there. So kind of started with wedges because that was, I would say, a big weakness. Because he was long enough that he could hit like a low heel cut into the fairway and still be longer than most and have a wedge in. And then the turning point where he called me was, he can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had something like 25 wedges in a 4-day event, and hit like none inside of 15 feet. And that was kind of hitting a bunch to 40 feet and kind of shooting a couple under for 4 days and finishing middle of the pack in a challenge tour event was kind of, I need to change. Like,
That's when he was tapping out on that.
yeah. And then obviously Wedges got pretty good pretty quickly, and that was the thing that opened him up to changing it elsewhere. So he kind of had a Kenny Perry like move, like picked it straight up outside to try and cut it,
Yeah.
but then got really deep late, and path was probably like 9 degrees out to the right, and just aimed left and held it off. I would say kind of like Rory.
I was going to say,
especially 2 or 3 years ago, like where, yeah. And the problem is Rory's great at swinging way out to the right and hitting big old high draws, would not be very good at aiming left and cutting it.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so he had Rory swing trying to hit cuts.
Rory swing trying to hit, yeah, that'd be a tough spot to be.
Yeah. And I would actually say more Rory on steroids, kind of way outside, like very extreme.
So what kind of drills did you start out with him doing?
A lot of stuff with getting the hand path more in and kind of turning more early. So in the beginning, it was very Kenny Perry, like Jay Haas, like no turn, pick the club straight up, and then turn all late, and kind of getting him understanding that with that late turn and late depth, all that's doing is shifting the path more and more and more out to the right.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what kind of he wanted to do.
For the record, I've never used steroids. Got it, Julian. I believe you.
Getting it more the opposite pattern. So more turn early. So the second half of the backswing was more kind of right arm folding, the club working vertically, so that then he could start clearing earlier and kind of have that kind of carry and kind of get the arms going out and kind of swinging way more left and kind of getting it. He's still not like, now he can get wedges to like 1.5 degrees left.
Okay.
Which is a bit like, that's recent. I would say it was still last year really good with driver, but wedges were still probably 2 or 3 degrees into out, and kind of played draws with short irons and still not comfortable cutting like a 3/4 pitching wedge.
Where did he start with so those wedges? What was he on the path?
A lot. Like I don't remember any specific numbers, but I know that even after he got to be top 100 in the world, it was still like 5, 6, 7 degrees out to the right.
Oh, wow.
And so I would say when he was still like challenge tour 1,500 in the world, like it had to be double digits.
Really, with a wedge?
Yeah.
Way to go, Julian.
And it always depended on how you would aim it. So like if you set it up with where he was aimed, like where his feet were aimed, like if he was aiming square to the launch monitor, it was way out to the right. So what he did is he just set up miles open to get the path 1 degree left.
I gotcha.
One of the biggest things we did was allow him not cheat, like had him actually aim right, try to start it left, and get it to cut.
So kind of like a Kuchar model, sort of, in a way?
Yeah, like a little more athletic and dynamic, but yes.
You get the point, guys. Hey, guys and girls, at this point, go ahead and ask some questions. Would you take some questions, Dan, with our viewers here? But there's one here already from Anthony Pham.
Yeah, Peter also had one earlier, I know.
Yeah, I think it was at the – well, let's get his as well. I didn't see Peter's. Oh, here it is. Let's hear about his junior program and how he's developing all these stud juniors. Yeah, I'm listening because I got a junior program as well.
Yeah. We're lucky in Florida that we can kind of play year-round, and there's usually some decent talent down here.
Yeah.
I would say probably the biggest thing that we have as far as benefit is the facility I'm at now is kind of allows us to do whatever we want.
That's a big help.
They're not listening, but they might not know that, but they kind of let us have free reign. So like the after school program is 3 times a week. And I would say as a general 2 of those days, we're on the golf course for 2 to 3 hours, spending time actually playing golf, learning how to play. And then they includes in the program, they get one-on-one lessons as well. So try to do a lot of the swing work actually when we're not in groups, and
Uh-huh.
then pretty much all the group time is either on the golf course or like doing some sort of competition. I want everything to be competitive. If we ever filmed it, it would not be PG-13. Like, there's a lot of highly
I know
competitive
what you
trash
mean.
talking
Yep.
going on, and there's some money changing hands,
I know
and
what you mean. Yep.
I would say we encourage all of that.
Yep.
And the kids know that they don't want to lose.
Yeah.
And so having someone that somebody used to beat the doors off of that now is as good as them is a powerful motivation tool. Like, no one,
100%.
we do a bunch, the putting contest that they always do is, it's basically you go through rounds and it's single eliminate. So whoever is last has to sit out, and then they go over again and then keep going. And so, like, if you're the first to lose, it might be an hour before you're allowed to hit another putt. You just have to sit there and watch everybody else.
Oh,
So
that's
you
brutal.
don't want to lose early. And then usually there's side bets going on during it for money changing hands.
For the people that keep going on.
Yeah, so the combination of,
I love it.
and sometimes it's from the peanut gallery betting on who's left to win. And it's good. Like, we have I would say we have age ranges from like 11 to 17. So
11
like
to 17, yeah.
But I would actually say, like, some of the better ones are actually the younger ones, especially when you're doing something that equalizes for distance. It's like a putting contest or short game where they're not all playing the same tee, so the older kids don't have an unfair advantage. I'll say the younger ones probably win more often than
The older
ones, and that usually motivates the older ones a lot. And then Julian's been really good. His brother, like, there's enough people around that aren't necessarily a part of the after-school program,
Yeah.
but are willing to spend time with the kids, play rounds of golf with it, like, do what, in many cases, humble them. The ones that think they're really good find out they're not where they need to be and not very good in the grand scheme of things. So kids that, I mean, we have a handful of kids that are probably top 30 to top 100 in their class, all at the same time. So it can be hyper competitive. And for the ones that, it sets the bar for the ones that are shooting 80, 82 to, they have to learn fast if they want to kind of keep up. And it usually, I would say it's more beneficial to the kids shooting 82 because they don't want to get left behind, and they usually actually push themselves harder than they really think they could and end up way better than they probably thought they could be starting out.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Do you find this, Dan? Because I've got 3 junior academies here in LA, and I've always found that the younger kids, we're all giving them something to work on. Do you find it that the younger kids actually put a little better effort to it than the older kids at times?
I don't know about effort, but I would definitely say they listen better. Like,
I probably mean that, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that as a general, they're more ignorant, so they don't really question anything, and they just kind of do exactly what you ask of them.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes them the ideal student.
Yeah.
You've probably seen Sam, I can't call him short anymore because he's probably like 5'2" at 11 years old. But relatively young Asian kid, and like the biggest thing we have to do with him is keep him engaged. So like he'll hit balls standing on balance disc through 2 alignment sticks that are 4 inches apart, and like blast driver through it as hard as he can. And it's the only way. Like, the harder you make it, the better he does. So it's a lot of it is challenging them. What the first 5 minutes they think is impossible, and then usually an hour in, they're doing it like 4 out of 5 times and talking trash the entire time.
That's I don't think people realize, like, growing up, that was part of the fun of the game,
Oh, we encourage, like, I don't want to tone it down at all. If anything, it's instigated that as much trash talk and money changing hands is as good as it can be.
And the best players in the world, like I had Tom Jenkins on yesterday, who used to play the tour back in the day. I'm talking about in the 70s. top 10 Tom is his nickname on senior tour. He's like 11th all-time money list. He's made $13 million on the senior tour. And I asked him about Palmer and Nicholas and Arnie, because he played with those guys. And he goes, those guys were the biggest needlers around. And I think still we hear that with Tiger and Phil to this day. You know, it doesn't go away.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest thing is they all know that it's from the right place. Like, they
Yes.
all know that we're here. And,
Yeah.
But what has really helped is I would say a third of the kids in the program were really shy and quiet and kind of weren't that kind of person.
Yeah.
And they're starting to become like a little cocky with some attitude, and now are some of the ones that talk the loudest and kind of run their mouth a lot because they're good.
Yeah.
But like what I've seen it done is the ones that write checks that they can't cash
Yeah.
want to get better really quickly because they're tired of
Yeah.
it blowing up in their face. And then the ones that were good but kind of understated start to get cocky and realize how good they are,
Yeah.
which can kind of create whole new problems. But
Yeah.
for the most part, it's been sometimes you have to rein it back a little bit, but for the most part, it's been positive.
But like, yeah, and to your point, all the great coaches I've had on here, and we've had a bunch of them, they've all said the same thing, exactly what you were saying, is that they all competition is key in practice. Competition is key, and you're no different. What you're saying about that stuff, you know, if you don't have it, it becomes real difficult to get real sharp.
Yeah, and then what we'll do too is my partner / whatever you want to call it is like he swept all the chapter like he's chapter match play, chapter stroke play champion, like, and so we'll go out and play with them when they realize that they can't beat two guys that never was and don't practice and don't really try, and if they can't beat us, they don't have a chance. So
Better
usually
get on it.
there's a lot of humbling that goes on every which direction, which is good for them. Like, then they listen a whole lot better when it comes time to actually spend work on the range.
I love it.
But to me, the most important thing is it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's super competitive. Like,
Yeah.
no one ever wants to be last place.
Nobody.
Because they're going to hear about it forever.
That's right.
Thanks for watching, everybody, the JRL Golf Academy. Please make sure to link and comment down below. Make sure you subscribe and turn on that little bell for notifications. And we look forward to seeing you on the next JRL Golf Academy.